could just ask about Progress 8, where your school's at with that, because that's again a huge sort of issue in all schools now. I mean, because presumably, the school potentially is a little vulnerable here. I don't know. I mean, maybe you've sort of seen, and if you don't meet the floor targets, you've been threatened with being taken over and that kind of thing. I mean, just any thoughts on that?
To be honest, I never think about that. I never think about threats or being worried about being taken over, because I sort of think, that's not really in the thinking of the governors or the local authority, that it doesn't really apply directly.
Yeah. So you're not feeling,
No, and the way that,
because many schools do, don't they?
Yeah, but I think they do, and I know that. I'm totally aware of that, and I've been involved in situations where that was actually a reality and it happened. But in Islington, it's not on the cards that a failing school will be taken over as such as the first, especially at the moment. I don't think that's a hot threat.
What, the post-Gove moment, you mean?
Yeah, like a sort of academy takeover type thing. I think there have been a few strategic things where schools have become academies, but that's a different thing. And that's a whole other debate about it. I mean, I do think, now I won't get sidetracked into talking about that, because I think there's a whole discussion about being an academy, having just been from an academy where now I'm not, and some of the...
What, Cakes was an academy?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a minute maybe, but in terms of the Progress 8, I do think accountability matters, but how I feel most accountable to is the parents. I feel that massively strongly here.
Can I ask you about that? Did that get an answer?
I mean, just like with Progress 8 particularly, I mean, that it has meant that people have changed the curriculum quite a lot. Is this something that you'll be
doing, no, because not here, because I think the curriculum we offer here, and it's got some real strengths to it, has always been sort of broad, and the Progress 8 is not like an extra challenge. I think the Progress 8 measure is far better than the 5A starter Cs. In fact, this school, I've inherited a situation where the 5A starter Cs measure has been quite problematic because of the number of kids at CD borderline, massively vulnerable.
It's much more difficult to game the system.
Yeah, and rightly so. And I'm sort of, I'm happy to rebuild our results profile over the next few years based on, teaching and learning rather than looking at the exam. So I'm not a head who's going to be saying, well, should we do the IGCSE in English for the next 2 years, because they still have the speaking and listening. I'm not interested in that. So
you're not.
And parents will pick that up actually. It's about confidence.
Yeah. So and parents, and learning, teaching the kids to do terminal exams. I think you can do that. You have to sort of, and actually I think it helps them to
do terminal exams.
Terminal exams. So the exams being at the end instead of modules. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The BTECs that we do in the sixth form, they're introducing test components.
But don't you think it's a bit unfair with Progress 8, 30% of your rating on the school league tables is on basically 2 English exams, the literature and the language. I mean, that's putting a lot, it's very high stakes exams, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's less than at the moment when it's 5A to C's, including English, it's sort of, and maths, it's, where...
But they're getting rid of all the coursework virtually, aren't they? With the GCSEs, So
but there are reasons for that. So I've had discussions with people at Ofqual and so on, and I have to say, I honestly think that all of that stuff had to be done, and I don't think it was as political as people think it was. I think it's.
What, you mean getting rid of speaking and listening, getting rid of coursework?
Absolutely. I think
because
it was just cheating, mass cheating.
Because actually, I really think that. I think any neutral person who was in the meeting with the data about the exams over the last few years would have thought, oh my God, the whole thing is broken. Because the percentage of kids getting the top few marks in speaking, listening, it just became, the whole thing had just
moved, it was somewhere where you could get top marks.
Distorted to the point where it's no longer really a measure of attainment. It had just become a hoop that everyone could jump through, and it was just like, it's not a really...
But what about a slightly different argument, which is it's a pity to take out, and maybe you don't have to take it out, like a school like School 21, Peter Hyman School, they put speaking and listening at the heart of the curriculum from the beginning, from year 7 onwards.
Yeah.
But the idea that speaking and listening, which is really the third part of your trivium, isn't it? It's a very, very important skill. But it's at the point that you're saying it doesn't belong in a GCSE, but it does belong in education.
I think it's better off being out of it, because I think it gets totally distorted. It's like science experiments. I mean, if you're a science teacher worth your salt, you don't think an ISA is a good learning experience as a joke. But doing practical work in the appropriate way as a science teacher is absolutely important, in its right place, and as an experience and also as to inform aspects of learning science. It's essential within the right context. So I think that's better. I think, say for example, at A-level, having these practicals that you have to do, and then you use that experience and that knowledge to be tested on, is much better than doing some Mickey Mouse experiment which you just rehearse. And so actually, taking things out of exams, I think, preserves them. Speaking and listening is valuable for its own sake. Turning it into an assessment for a GCSE ruins it entirely. I think it's, but what it does, and it's happening at this school, it will make our headline figures go down because it was possible to get the kids the C's, but they can't get it. They couldn't get it without that. So they're affected by it.
And also,
in a way, you know,
I mean, not everyone's good at high stakes tests, are they? And is it a fair assessment of an exam? You know, what you can scribble in a few hours.
Well, that's a wider discussion. So the event we've been running here today about setting up a movement to establish a national baccalaureate for England. You know, that's the whole thrust behind it, which is that a baccalaureate structure generally allows you to have very tightly managed exams which value those things, but you've got all these other experiences and skills and you know, learning modes which are valued in a different way, which are important and as arguably as important.
Are you going to introduce elements of the Bacc? Can you do that? Excuse my sort of ignorance, but can you create a Bacc type situation here? You're going to do that.
We've already put up our slide for our Year 11 saying that, you know, when you come to the sixth form here, we're going to be doing a baccalaureate. But actually, from today's meeting and various other discussions, bringing that thinking further down in the school is also something we need to do.
So everybody will do something out in the community, and everybody will have an individually sort of transcription of their achievements when they leave. That kind of thing.
That type of thing.
So more like the old record of achievement type.
But a bit like that, but a bit more, a bit deeper than that, because it's more, planning from the beginning, kind of someone's whole education, and saying, making sure that they've all had a minimum exposure or kind of experience of doing physical activity, outdoor ed or something. So, we're going to be taking our sixth formers on Outward Bound, everybody, we're going to pay for it, we're going to, those sorts of things are decisions you can take. Lower down the school, we have this fantastic programme that I've just inherited with music.
Yes,
it's fantastic. So that's very exciting when all the students learn a musical instrument. And now those things are embedded. They're not because of the exam system. They're there because we think they're important. And I think the same needs to be true of speaking and listening.
But presumably it'd be tested or assessed for the baccalaureate. I mean, what's to stop?
Well,
if the baccalaureate becomes a badge of value, what's to stop people gaming that?
Well, that's the thing. So that's what some people worry about. But the discussion we're having today about how, you need to sort of transcend that whole thinking. You need to say, well, there's nothing to gain really. You've got because you don't, you're trying to give kids the opportunities to develop their skills in various ways and give them all these experiences. You don't want to rob them of that. You're not going to cheat on that for presentational purposes because there's no value in that.
Right.
So that's about culture.
It's about culture and ethos and expectations.